Today we start working with the inverse of a number, and most of this we already know how to deal with, but I want to start with a review problem because we're going to have to use this when we are doing our work today. Let's start with 3/4, just a basic fraction multiplication problem. 3/4 times 8/15. We learned when we were multiplying fractions that we can factor diagonally. Factoring means I'm going to divide both of these numbers diagonally by the greatest common factor, or the biggest number that will go into it evenly. So 4 divided by 4, 4 is the greatest common factor. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. And I can do the same thing with the 3 and the 15. I can divide them both by 3. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Then we multiply across with what we have left. 1 times 2 is 2. 1 times 5 is 5. So my answer is 2/5. That's our first review problem. The next one is this one. 1/7 times 7. Well, we learned when we were multiplying fractions that if I'm multiplying a fraction by a whole number, that I need to rewrite this as 1/7 times 7 over 1. So now I can do my factoring just like I did on the first example. 7 divided by 7 is 1. 7 divided by 7 is 1. And if I multiply across, 1 times 1 is 1, 1 times 1 is 1, I get 1. That situation right there is what we call, and let's mark it up here by where we started. This is called the inverse. If I multiply a whole number times 1 over that whole number, I'm always going to get 1. We can actually write this as a rule. Rule of inverses. The rule of inverses says that if I multiply A times 1 over A, I will always get 1. Always. If I multiply a number times 1 over that number, I will always get 1. So for example, if I had 13 times 1/13, that's going to be 1. We don't even need to do all of our fraction work with that. If we can recognize that as an inverse, 13 times 1/13 is 1. What if the order is changed? What if it is 1/27 times 27? It's still 1. All right? So we're going to use that, and we're going to use multiplying with fractions today. We're going to use both the inverse and multiplying with fractions. Let's do some examples here. You're going to be asked to simplify. And most of this assignment today boils down to how well can you multiply fractions and how well can you see inverses. So this will be a good review for us. Let's say that I have -6 AB times -1/3. -6 AB times -1/3. Well, first things first, why don't we just get the sign of my answer taken care of so I don't have to think about it anymore? What's a negative times a negative? Positive. So my answer is going to be positive something. Okay, I know it's going to be a positive number. Now I don't need to think about the signs anymore. I can just do my math. So what I've got here is I've got a situation where I can use the commutative property and change the order. I can make this 6 times 1/3. All right? So I just told you that if this is not an inverse, but I do need to use my technique of writing this 6 over 1 times 1/3. All right? And now I do my factoring. Can't I factor with the 3 and the 6? 3 divided by 3 is 1. 6 divided by 3 is 2. Multiply across. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 times 1 is 1. 2 over 1 is the same thing as 2. But wait, didn't I have an AB? Right? So it's going to be 2AB. And we said it's going to be positive, so I can just write it as 2AB. So it's basically just a fraction problem along with dealing with some variables in there. Let's do some more. How about 9m times 1/9? If you see this one, you should be happy, because this problem has no work to do if you can recognize something. Do you see there's an inverse there? Do you see the 9 times 1/9? What's 9 times 1/9? 1, right? So this is 1m. Problem's done. Okay, as soon as you recognize the inverse, 9 times 1/9 equals 1, then the problem's over with. 1m. That one's an easy one. All right, let's take a look at this one. Negative 32 xy times negative 1/8. Why don't you go ahead and do that one on your own. I'll pause the video. All right, this problem, I'm going to have a negative times a negative. My answer is going to be a positive again. So I just need to do the fraction work. 32 over 1 times 1/8. 8 divided by 8 is 1. 32 divided by 8 is 4. So I multiply across. 4 times 1 is 4. 1 times 1 is 1. So that is 4. Don't forget about your xy. And it is a positive 4xy. They may occasionally give you one that has 3 terms. Negative 12rs times 1 over negative 2 times 1/3. Something like that. Now, this isn't anything to be alarmed about. We don't need to worry if we see one like this. We just need to simplify it a little bit before we start. Now look right here. If it were me, I would take care of these two fractions first. Isn't that multiplication? And isn't that easy multiplication? There's nothing I can factor, right? So I just multiply across. What's 1 times 1? 1. What's negative 2 times 3? Negative 6. So I can call this a negative 1/6. And now I'm multiplying that by negative 12rs. If you just do that first, then the problem's not so hard, because now I've got a negative times a negative. It's going to be a positive, and I just do the fraction work. I have 12 over 1 times 1/6. Do my factoring. 6 divided by 6 is 1. 12 divided by 6 is 2. Multiply across. You get 2. So my final answer would be 2rs. All right? So that problem's not near as bad as what it looks like. Let's go on to example 5. This problem really catches people off guard. For whatever reason, as soon as people see letters in the place of numbers, they often think that things work differently, but they don't. A variable takes the place of a number. So we use the same rules that we use for numbers. This is just like number 2. Do you see the 9 and the 1 over 9? And that became 1? Well, look at this problem. Don't I have an n times a 1 over n? Right? So what is n times 1 over n? No. It's 1. It's 1. Okay? A number times 1 over that number is 1. We called that the inverse. All right? So now I've just got 1 times 8, which is 8. You're going to see some like that tonight. Make sure you refer back to your notes. 1 over n times 8n, well, it's just the inverse. All right? Now, you're also going to have some where you have to use distributive property, which we've been working with the last few days. Use distributive property to do this problem, but we're also going to use what we know about fractions. 1/3 times 18m minus 3v. We've been working with the distributive property the last couple days, and we're still going to use it the same way. All right, but watch carefully. When I distribute this multiplication on this problem, I'm going to multiply 1/3 times 18. So that's one problem. 1/3 times 18, and I need to put it over 1. And I also need to multiply 1/3 times 3. Now, there should be a little flag going up in your brain. What is 1/3 times 3? 1. You may as well, make your work as easy as possible. 1/3 times 3 is 1. So this term over on the right-hand side is going to be 1v. That's easy. Now I just need to do, and it's going to be minus 1v. All right? Because we multiply over top of the addition or subtraction. And here, I just need to do my factoring. 3 divided by 3 is 1. 18 divided by 3 is 6. So 1 times 6 is 6 over 1. This is going to be 6m minus 1v. So it's just the distributive property, but we're using our fraction work. Let's do another one of those just so you feel a little bit more comfortable. What if I had negative 8 times 1/8 x minus 1/4 y? This will be our last problem of the day. It's still the distributive property, so I'm going to distribute my multiplication to each of these. All right? Pay attention to your signs, though. But look what I've got on this first one. Don't I have 8 times 1/8? What's 8 times 1/8? 1. So this first term is going to be 1x, but is it positive or negative 1x? Negative. It's negative because it's a negative times a positive. All right? Now, the second term, is the second term going to be a positive or a negative term? It's going to be a positive because I have a negative times a negative. This second term will be a positive. Now let's do our fraction work. I have 8 times 1/4. Okay, I'm taking this 8 and I'm multiplying it by 1/4. So I need to put the 8 over 1, do my factoring. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 8 divided by 4 is 2. So this is going to be 2y. Most of the factoring on these problems you're going to do tonight is pretty easy factoring. That's the good news. Okay, they should factor pretty nicely and not be real painful. This is your final answer. We'll stop there for today.